It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Kari Nissena. Hi, Kari. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. As we were talking about just before we got on, you and I kind of have some mutual friends. Dane Reese was one, and
yes,
Diane Franklin.
Dane and I are definitely in the actor coaching world together, and I love that. You brought him on. I think that he's doing such a great job with his show as well, and yours. I'm a big fan.
Well, thank you, thank you. Yeah, Dane was a nice guy. He was one of those people that once we get on the show, we can't stop talking, and that always works out for a great interview.
Yes,
you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people.
Well, you bring on good people too.
Some people. And I'm not going to mention names, but some people are kind of shy when they come on the show, which I find sort of ironic because, you know, if speaking isn't really what you want to do, then why are you coming on to do an interview, right?
Yeah.
But you get these people that just do like 1-word and 2-word answers, and it really makes the host's job difficult.
You're like, please elaborate.
But Dane had no problem with that. So we
Great guy.
We went on and on. So acting coach, business coach, is there a big demand for this? Because like you said, Dane does this and you're doing something similar.
Well, how I look at it is, yes, there is a whole world of actors and artists out there that go and work so hard and get such great training and experience under their belts. And then they get out into what we can call the real world of being an actor and have absolutely no idea on how to do it as a business and how to make a living at it. So one of my favorite things to help actors with is the business side of the business, because it doesn't matter how talented someone is if nobody knows that they exist, right? Well, they can't hire them. That's something I always say is they cannot hire you if they don't know you exist. It's impossible.
Well, that's true. Well, let me ask you something then, because one of the rants that I have on my show, if you've listened to more than a couple of episodes, I tend to bring it up as often as possible. Yeah. Is the effect that technology, the internet, has had on performing artists generally. I know with musicians, since I'm a musician and a singer-songwriter, it's turned the industry upside down. It doesn't resemble anything like it did from the 70s or 80s.
Right.
However, with actors, I don't know, maybe you can correct me on this, but it seems to me that wouldn't have affected actors as much because the process is still the same, right? You still have to audition. You still have to get up in front of the camera and do whatever it is you do. Mm-hmm. The distribution of film, if you're a film actor, that's changed. But the actual acting process, I don't know. It doesn't seem like technology would have affected so much. What do you think?
I'll tell you, it's crazy. Technology has really, really changed the industry. And definitely in the last 10 years, but even in the last 2 years, the entire acting industry has changed because everyone was at home. So now the entire auditioning community is done almost solely on an actor's cell phone or computer at home.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's virtual auditions now rather than the proverbial cattle call type auditions. Yeah.
Right. Well, they might do a virtual cattle call.
Oh, a virtual cattle call.
Okay. They can send out, let's just use the, what do you call it? West Side Story, the recent West Side Story. They apparently looked for thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the world for that film. And all of those auditions first came through their cell phone, you know? So it wasn't until it gets to the bigger roles and they're actually really competing for, you know, they're looking at 5-10 actors for a role, then they start getting more in person and things like that. Typically, that's how it's going. But that's even going that way on the small level of small projects, because everybody's trying to be safe. So they have, sometimes people are just getting offers from their tapes, which that's always been done, but more so now, because if a casting director doesn't have to rent out a space and
right, well, that's true,
put people in danger, you know, just to have them come into a small, a tiny room, you know, a lot can be done online. And I look at that as good news, because it's kind of evened the playing field for a lot of actors. So it used to be pretty much had to be in LA or New York. And now Atlanta has been coming up big time. And you can really audition anywhere in the world for projects. Now, if you're not in the United States, you probably won't be in tune with all the ways to find those auditions, you know, usually. But let's just say you're a US-based actor, you can pretty much do 95% of your career at home now.
Let's assume that COVID is going to go away at some point and we get back to where we can actually touch each other. Do you think that the online process is here to stay, though, or are we going to go back to the in person?
I do. Well, I think it's going to be a hybrid, okay. But what's happened is that people have realized, oh, wow, I don't have to spend thousands of dollars every month on an office, you know?
Yeah.
I don't have to spend all this extra money on equipment and waiting rooms and all that stuff, when now it pretty much is done, you know, just online. So once casting directors and especially actors, once they became more comfortable with the process and how to audition online, then it becomes, oh, well, now the hard part is over. Now you can do this all day long. And it's actually, there's good to, you know, pros and cons to everything. But as an LA actor, so many of my clients are like, oh, thank God I don't have to drive 2 hours to Santa Monica for a 5-second audition now.
Well, like you said, it is good and bad. And then I'm going to just reiterate what I said at the beginning, which was that it's turned the industry upside down for music. And I think in a certain way, it has done the same thing for actors, in the sense that, yes, it's leveled the playing field, but it's also saturated the market. I'm going to guess that there are many times more people auditioning for the same part, because it's easy to do online. If you have to, like you said, drive 2 hours to Santa Monica, or if you're in Kansas or someplace, you wouldn't even be auditioning for these parts.
Yeah, you know, that's a big difference. If you're living in a small town in the middle of nowhere, you can now audition for LA projects.
Right.
But it's
exactly. Which is good and bad.
Good and bad, of course.
Yeah.
But for the oversaturated, I think that this career has always been oversaturated. Like, everybody thinks that they can be an actor because it looks so easy. And then once they get into it, they're like, oh my God, this is the hardest job ever on the planet. Like, nobody can ever book anything, is what it feels like when you're new, you know, and until you start booking. You have people that are now, again, figuring out the technicalities. Also with social media, I've heard you talk about that before. That's, a lot of actors hate social media, but that can be an interesting tool, and it's free. So there are people who, if they can find a way to kind of rig the system, then that can be a way for them to get other exposure. Or let's say a YouTube video, you know, it used to be that no one could break into the studio system. And now someone can truly, on their cell phone, produce an entire series and get exposure on YouTube.
Well, that's true. Yeah. I mean, the the indie film and TV market has just been blown wide open. Why bother with the major studios? Because what I've noticed is that the major studios aren't very interested these days in doing anything other than the big tentpole Marvel Comics $200 million budget type stuff. James Bond, Star Trek,
Yeah.
The romantic comedies, the dramas, a kind of a lower budget horror film. They all have gone indie. All of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like you can see that the little guy is, if they're really inspired and can really get out there and maybe have a fresh idea, they actually have a chance now when they used to not.
But this again is the good and bad, because while it's cheap to make a film, much cheaper than it used to be with digital imaging and digital editing, the distribution side is a whole nother animal.
Yes,
and
definitely.
The major studios still have the advantage for distribution, just like with music. The major record labels still have the advantage for distribution. So you can make all the films you want. Now the trick is get people to see them, get people to know that they exist.
Right.
And let me bring this around to your coaching. Is part of your process of coaching actors just that, the idea of, well, you're just, one in a bazillion out there. How do you get yourself to stand out online, on social media, things like that?
Yeah, I work with actors on their IMDb and on their marketing, on their press, on their just web presence in general.
Okay.
So if someone, let's just say if an actor is from a different generation, I have many clients that, let's say they took off 20 years to raise kids or something like that. Well, when they left the business, it was a completely different animal, and they could just get an agent, and hopefully that agent would get them out and they'd audition. And if they did a good job, they book it. That's how some people, that's how everybody wishes that it still was. And it really, I feel like it never was that way, at least for me and for a lot of people I know. So now you come back, and even in the last just couple of years, you have, oh my gosh, now I have to really run a business to be an artist. And not only take care of my craft, obviously I have to be great and have to have talent and know what I'm doing when I get hired. But guess what? There's no shortage of talent out there. None. But there is a shortage of actors and artists who understand the business and know how to get themselves seen and know how to get to the people that can give them jobs too.
Yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, a lot of artists aren't really good with that left brain stuff. They're great creators, but when it comes to business sense, they don't have a clue. Not all. Some are great, but it's diametrically opposed thinking processes.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Because you're trained your whole life to be an artist and working on your craft.
Right.
And that's a different side of our brains and our bodies and our souls.
The people that are really, really good business-wise tend to be tremendously great left-brain people. But they probably can't do what the artists can do. That's why it was always a good marriage when you had an agent or a business manager. Because you needed two people, one to take care of the business side, one to take care of the art. And that always worked. Granted, there were stories of business agents ripping off artists. Okay, that's been going on for forever. Yeah. But assuming you got a decent one.
A decent person who knows what they're doing and knows how to do their job and everything.
Right,
yeah.
And they could make or break you. Now it's really, the ball's landed in the artist's lap to have to do everything. And
so then it becomes really important to work on mindset, which is everything. It really is everything.
Separating your passion from your business product is something difficult for many artists who wear their song that they just wrote on their sleeve. And when they take it out to a prospective distributor or to a record label, and your song is treated basically no different than a can of soup, it can be very disheartening for some songwriters. I know I went through it. I'm okay now. I got through my therapy.
What's kind of interesting though is look at what you do as running an amazing podcast, right? It's both creative and business,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
So when I think the goal becomes when we resist all the changes that are like, okay, this is the business now. And it'll change again. It'll keep on evolving. But for what it is right now, people really do have to hustle, and learn certain things or be good enough at making money so that they can delegate to others.
Yeah, that's the key.
Yeah. So if someone let's just say absolutely hates social media once it makes them sick, right? Then that is a very easy thing to hire out to a social media manager. That's, so that can be one thing that's taken off their plate. But when it comes to things like let's say a YouTube channel, a YouTube channel has so many technicalities that most people don't know about, right? So once they make peace with that and can just learn just enough so that their videos can get seen, then it's also kind of a creative process above and beyond what is on the video, so looking at doing graphic art work for my my post on Instagram, that's actually can be artistic. So I think making peace with the artist, when it feels like business, is say, okay, how can I make this fun and how can I make this that I don't hate it so much? And then also putting systems into place. So how can I do this so I don't have to work so hard?
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Hi, this is John Morgan, production supervisor for DJC Productions. And you're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Well, was my next point, actually. I mean, is it actually possible that somebody can do all of this all by themselves? I mean, that's just a daunting task.
It's completely daunting, and it's not for everyone, and that's why a lot of people quit, honestly. But I'll give you an example. I have a friend, I'm not going to name his name, but he's a successful actor, and he is on the computer. If he's not on set or on a stage that day, his work day is a good 14 hours on his computer, because the job of an actor is when you're not working, your job is to get work. That is the job.
Right.
So he's a genius of both marketing, press, everything, but that's because he's hungry too. That's because he goes out into the world and really is completely made its career happen, completely, 100% from just hard work. And that's what I think that the dream of being an actor is so interesting, because people really do believe, I think, even not just beginners, I think almost everybody thinks they're going to come to LA or New York or whatever. They're going to get in an acting class, get a headshot, and get an agent. And then that's their whole plan.
And wait to be discovered.
And then wait. And I'm like, okay, no, that's like kindergarten. That's the first little baby steps. Now you got to get to real work. Now you got to do all the other stuff too. So when you're a big deal in a small town, maybe you're really good on the stage, or maybe you're just a really good actor, and you've had the training. But then when you get to the big leagues, it's like, oh, okay, now I got to actually get serious and I got to treat it as a business, a real business. Headshot, agent, and class.
And then what was the old place that in the 1940s and the golden days of Hollywood? The Schraff's lunch counter, where the starlets would go and sit.
Yeah, you're going to get discovered at the Schwab's or whatever.
Schwab's or Schraff's or whatever it was called. Yeah. I think those days are over. Yeah.
I don't know that they ever really happen. Here's the thing. Luck, I do believe in luck, and I don't believe in luck. So yes, there are times where, okay, you happen to be at the right event at the right time and talk to the right person, and that feels lucky, right? And it is lucky. However, you did get dressed that day and found a way to network to get into that opportunity, and you showed up instead of staying at home, and you maybe learned some networking skills and some how to talk to humans, at a party.
Right.
And you did all that to make that luck happen.
Well, that's true. But, we could make the argument of luck versus fate, or, it's all on your perspective, which way you want to go with it. Some people don't like to take credit for their deeds and just be very modest about it and say, oh, well, I just guess I got lucky. But, I think people need to pat themselves on the back once in a while as well.
Totally.
There's a fine line, though, because you can come off like an egomaniac if you'd go too far to the other side.
Yeah.
And that's a real turn off for people. Let me ask you one more thing, and then we got to kind of wrap this up. Let's talk a little bit about talent, because lost in all of this cyber noise that's out there, there are some genuinely tremendously talented people with their craft who really don't have much of a business sense. Again, I'm going back to what I was talking about.
Yeah.
But these days, what do you think is more important because of the oversaturated market out there? Is it more important to have savvy business skills and maybe mediocre talent, or have tremendous talent and mediocre business skills?
That's such a great question. Well, if you have tremendous talent and mediocre business skills, then you're kind of relying on the luck factor, that someone finds it out.
Yeah.
And that does happen. So you do see some artists, like, let's say, like Joaquin Phoenix, who I think is a genius, he's not good at doing the press game at all, or at least he appears to be extremely uncomfortable a lot of the times. But he has people for that, right? And his talent is extraordinary.
Yeah.
So, yes, he started as a kid and he was booking as a kid, but let's just say he wasn't famous. If that level of talent came to town today, he would need to be seen by the right people still. So sometimes that's luck, because the person just happens to watch the play that day, that one performance. That has happened to many, many celebrities. Just someone happens to be in the audience at that time. Or let's say they're friends with someone that knows how good they are, and that friend might fight for them. But again, that's waiting for stuff that's outside of themselves. even no matter how talented someone is, someone has to see it.
True.
To do anything about it. Now, in today's age, there are plenty of people who are working all the time. This is the other side of that coin, right? There are tons of people who are working and maybe they're not so talented. You know, we see that on TV and in movies all the time. We're like, how'd that guy get that job? Right? Like, I know 20 of my friends that are better than he is, right? Guess what? Maybe he has an incredible work ethic. Maybe he's a really nice guy and it just makes friends easily. So people know him. And I've done that myself on the producing side where I have, you know, thrown in a friend. Like, oh yeah, throw them a line, whatever, you know, because there's no reason not to. Right. So sometimes you can do that if you're like an Adam Sandler who keeps on hiring his friends. Because why wouldn't you?
Well, it's right? True. Yeah. Well, if
you can do the job.
If you ever want to see a particular genre of people doing their craft that is so oversaturated, and you're talking about, you know, how did that guy get on? Check out any podcasts on Apple or. I wrote a book about this because podcasting is probably the worst one if you compare it to music or to acting or to filmmaking or authors, okay, because it's the one that requires the least amount of talent, equipment, anything. The bar has been put on the floor, and people think, "Oh, I got a computer, I can talk, I can do this," and they switch and they switch it on and they go. And some of this stuff is just absolutely awful.
Yeah,
you know. And what happens is that people that are serious broadcasters really kind of take offense to it because there's people that have gone to school, there's journalists that are out there who do reporting, who have really studied the craft, and there is a certain craft to it, absolutely. And a certain talent. It depends what you're doing. If you're just reporting and reading off a teleprompter, okay, that's one set of skills, but you have to be good to do that as well. You have to have a presence and a nice sounding voice and, you know, at least reasonably good looking. Although that's not really as important. I mean, I don't think Walter Cronkite would have ever made Stud of the Month. But he was... That
was a different time and that was authority is what they had.
Yeah, exactly. But he was a hell of a news broadcaster. You know, the best one I think that ever was around. Him and Ed Murrow and all those old guys. Yeah. But it's really, there are 2.7 million registered podcasts on...
And it's not stopping.
On Listen Notes, and I know it's going up exponentially every day.
Yeah.
So
well, I'll tell you what, I'll come back on the show when I have my podcast, right?
Yeah, there you go.
I'll let you. No, but you're totally right. Is because, again, it looks easy on the surface, and people don't know how challenging it is to marry the art, the talent, the craft, and the business and the technical aspects of it.
It's a shame because, you know, like you were talking about the business side, this is probably where we fall a little short. You know, my producer is a very talented guy. He's great with bookings. I mean, we're booked up through, I think, March 1st at this point.
Good.
You know, he knows how to give great email and do all of that side of it, okay? But where we lack is with our social media because neither of us really want to handle it. You know, I get out there, we post all the shows, but we're not as engaging as we probably need to be. Our site doesn't look as wonderful and as slick as I've seen other sites. And, you know, I look at it and go, yeah, we should really fix that. Or we should really kind of, you know, clean that one up a little bit. And then we both look at each other and go, yep, let's go to lunch. Okay. And that's the end of that.
That'll stay on the to-do list.
Yeah, right? That'll stay. So, you know, I'm just sort of hoping that to go back to the Schraff's ice cream parlor analogy, that because I'm meeting so many people coming through the show, that there'll be somebody who comes through that's going to give us that push, you know, because we're just on the edge right now. I've built this show up from 0 to, I don't know, we've got like over 5,000 subscribers on YouTube and We're getting there, but we're in that range where, okay, we can bring this up to a point, but there's a big gap between having thousands of YouTube subscribers and millions. There's a huge gap there. And somehow we haven't figured out how you bridge that gap.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? YouTube especially, it's really about the technicalities on how to get seen because it's a search engine.
Yeah.
It's not social media in the normal sense.
I know once you get to 10,000 subscribers, YouTube sort of gives you a kick in the butt because they'll put your suggestion for your show. I forget what the page is called.
Yeah, suggested.
Suggested. Right. Okay, you will get a big boost once you go over 10,000. So you will start being seen by people who just clicked on, who had never heard of you, and all of a sudden, oh, check out the Douglas Coleman Show. Bang.
Yeah.
Where you don't get that very much if you're below 10,000. So there is a line there. So it could be a snowball effect. Like if you get up to 10,000 subscribers and start getting, 10,000 views per video, then they push you up. Then more people, and so on and so on and so on. I think.
YouTube, that's true. And then they have session time is important with YouTube. So not just views, but if someone goes and watches one of your interviews and then stays and watches 3 more, that counts more than like having separate sessions.
Okay.
So that they want to keep you on YouTube as long as possible.
Right. Okay.
So there are kind of, not, I don't want to call them tricks, but there are techniques for that of how to get them at the end of one video to watch the next video and, completing your playlist and having the right, they don't do tags as much anymore, but still having tags, taking advantage of the tags and the hashtags and the search, how people would search for the video. So it's a whole, I'm learning so much about YouTube, and it's a whole planet all to itself.
Yeah, we kind of dived into YouTube a little bit on a rainy Saturday, and him and I discovered that YouTube doesn't really volunteer all of this information. You've got to sort of figure it out yourself.
It's time consuming because it's a big world in there. YouTube is the second biggest search engine on the planet.
After Google, right?
And Google owns YouTube.
Right. Exactly.
So it's I think it's smart that you're on there, and I think it's smart for like every actor to at least be able to be found on YouTube for sure.
Well, we're kind of switching over. I mean, we went through this whole process of distribution, and we went through several distribution companies, both of which we no longer work with, because we thought it was just a waste of money. Not that they were ripping us off. That's not what I mean. But we would be paying a couple $100 a month, and they would put our show out on 1 billion different sites, most of them you've never heard of. And we got nothing out of it because that just, that threw our show into the wind, basically. So we are just kind of compressing where the show is. See, there's always been this argument about the more places you are seen on, the more places that you will be potentially seen. But my attitude is shifting to the less places you are on, the more concentrated your audience will be.
Concentration, yes.
Because they'll have to go to YouTube if they want to see the show at all. If it's on 50 other sites, you're going to get one view on each of the 50 sites. If you're just on YouTube, you'll get all 50 views on one spot.
I think there's really something to that, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm right or not, but that's what we're going with.
No, I do think you're right. Here's my 2 cents on it. I think you need to be able to be found on all the sites and then redirected to the one that you really want them on.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because in the acting world, let's say an actor hates Twitter. I'm like, you don't have to love it and you don't have to use it all the time, but at least have your headshot, a nice header, your bio, and your link to your IMDb and all that stuff. And then have a pinned tweet that directs you, if you like Instagram, that directs traffic, say, hi, I'm not on here often, but follow me on Instagram or whatever. and then because let's say a casting director only likes Twitter, then that's the only place that they would find you.
Right. That's very true.
Once they can find you, now they know where to go and look for your stuff. So I think you're right. I think concentrated on your favorite platforms, but have the other ones directing traffic to it.
The other nice thing about YouTube is it's free, at least for the moment.
Free, yay!
And you can upload as much as you want.
I know. It's pretty. I love YouTube.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm on there all the time.
Kari, we do have to wrap this up. Unfortunately, we are out of time.
Oh. Well, it's been a pleasure, my dear.
Give out your website so people can come check you out.
Yeah. Actortransformation.com. And then there's a links tab on there that directs you to all the other places.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much. This was a nice conversation. It was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too. Thanks for having me.
Best of luck.